Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. Okay, welcome to Bond's base station. Can you hear me, Brian?
I can perfectly well. Go ahead. Nice
Okay, let's do the checklist. Flaps checked, avionics checked. We don't want to tell our audience what happened yesterday.
It's a dry run.
Okay, so once again, welcome to Bond's base station. It's a virtual lounge, basically one of our time travel capsules where uh, our industry professionals, experts um, join us to have discussions on various industry topics on telecommunications, mobile, ICT, emerging technology, uh, and many others. So, just a little brief. My name is Rizwan Afshar. Uh, I'm the CEO of Business in Motion, technology and telecommunications consulting firm based out of South Africa. So, further ado, I would like to tell everyone that this first session is focused on mobile, which is my passion, which is I was literally born in the industry back in 1995. So I've actually sold those Motorola Ultra Sleeks. It used to be $2,000 back in the days. So telecommunications or mobile communications have always intrigued me. It's really magic. When a person's sitting thousands of miles across another continent and we can speak to each other, we can hear each other. And I was so much into phones, in my when I was in school or college or in my professional life. Actually, initially when we were single and young. So my mom used to say, you're always on the phone. I think you're gonna marry a phone one day. So well, thank God I did not marry, but I eventually ended up marrying the industry. So here we are. So let's start the session, James. So I have my notebook here. I'm pretty retro and conventional. So let's I'm going to throw a lot of questions at you. So I hope you
Far
are
away.
you're fully energized. Okay. So tell me about for the audience. Again, I would like to say that since mobile is my passion. Mobile is everything. You must have seen even in Mobile World Congress Barcelona. It's the tagline, and especially it's the mobile and telecommunications, the how the mobile technology has bridged the gap of communication, either it's data or content. I think if it was not for these technologies, human beings would be not the same as we are. So coming back to the topic. So here today the topic is we have James here. So first I would like to request James to introduce himself, and then I'm gonna start firing the questions at you.
Grilling me. Okay, no problem at all. Hello and welcome to this particular session. My name is Brian James Douglas. I'm the head of business development for a Spanish software education development company called Escudo Web, and I'm based in Madrid. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, James. So today we are going to talk about something very focused. My idea is to have a one-on-one with you and discuss about on mobile or on a smartphone. It's being used for plenty of reasons, but to me, it's all about the valuable use and the means we get through and on a mobile device. So for me, something on the learning side, on the education side, tell me what have been the trends when we talk about specifically edutech on smartphones or mobile education. So give a brief on that. What's the industry shaping up? What's happening? Are we somewhere something is happening, and what is it actually?
Okay, well, inevitably, children from an increasingly younger age are being exposed to mobile phones and technology in general. In fact, just to put some context around this, I've got some figures from a report produced by an organization in the UK called Ofcom, which stands for the Office of Communications, Regulatory and Competition Authority for the Broadcasting, Telecoms and Postal Industries in the UK. So it's a rather long-winded name, which is very nice to be shortened to Ofcom. And in their research that they published last year, 2019, they declared a number of things. And they broke down the age group of children, 8 to 11-year-olds and 12 to 15-year-olds. I'll just share some of those figures then. So 8 to 11-year-olds, 35% of children have their own smartphone and 47% have their own tablet. 93% go online for nearly 13 and a half hours a week, and 18% have a social media profile. I mean, if we're not aware of some of these figures, they are to a certain extent, I suppose, alarming. And if we haven't given our children who happen to be in that particular age range a mobile phone yet, they will be demanding them from their parents. One of the more concerning figures about this is that 40% of children who own a mobile phone are allowed to actually take it to bed. Now, I'll comment about that a little bit later on, but this is not a particularly good situation. If we look at 12 to 15-year-olds, that number increases, it more than doubles. So 83% have their own smartphone, 50% have their own tablet, and 99% go online for nearly 20 and a half hours a week. So technology is really in their lives. They're surrounded by it, their friends have it. And in particular, now we take into account the current situation with COVID-19, children are having to turn to technology in order to continue their education. So I think as parents, we need to accept this, but what we also need to do is try and manage this particular area. Technology can have a huge impact on children, how they socialize, how they interact with each other. And also it can have a positive impact on their both mental and emotional well-being. But it comes to a certain point, and there's this hypothesis called the Goldilocks Hypothesis. In other words, you can have too much of this. And when you start to have too much exposure to technology, it can have some very negative consequences. And I'll talk a little bit about that throughout this discussion. So, but as an introduction, these figures obviously reflect the situation in the UK. I'd probably say that in the United States, probably these figures are much higher, and in many other countries, they're much lower. But whatever the situation is, whatever the numbers are at the moment, they are only going to be increasing. On the one hand, this is helped by the reduction in costs of mobile phones and tablets as well. They're much more accessible to everyone. And obviously the economies of scale are making it much easier for most families to be able to afford it as well. So yes, we can't stop this particular route, but what we can try and do is manage it and put in place certain tools in order to ensure that while technology can be embraced, it's managed. And it's important for parents to take that on board and to take this on as a challenge, really, and ensure that their children can learn, can use the technology, use it efficiently, use it effectively, but also ensure that children are protected. Over to you, Riz.
Okay. Well, see, the technology is all around us. I believe that human beings, if you take the history, so the times we live in, we are the most modern and powerful human beings of all times. We are most powerful. We have the most scariest of weapons. We have the emerging technology, and other forms of technologies we have are state of the art. And especially especially in the last 1 or 2 years, the way the pace has taken the velocity, it's not going to stop. Actually, it's going to further grow. So and so how does that translate into how we manage our children, our our youth? How does the education and the content play into this overall scenario? Because mobile smartphones have literally everything. There are applications, there are tools, there are ways, and mobile devices have become a personal part of the body. It's really personal, even for children. And I would like you to explain on that as well. So how does all of this play into?
Okay, so the fact that we are surrounded and that children are increasingly either being gifted or certainly having access to technology, we need to ensure that yes, they can use it for some part of their leisure time, albeit within a controlled environment. But obviously, as you rightly say, these are tools that can be used for educational purposes. And in most countries around the world now, there are a number of companies who are creating digital content. This digital content is for children to be able to consume it on whatever type of device they want, be it a mobile phone, a tablet, a laptop, a Chromebook. And if this is done both within the educational environment, so at schools are looking more into using this as part of their everyday curriculum. It also can help the actual interaction between children and their teachers. Child's doing homework at home, they can actually send, for example, questions. They can ask the teacher online, maybe through a Moodle session. And it can really increase the productivity of children. But obviously this content needs to be suitable. It needs to be appropriate. So it's very important that built into all this technology, so the hardware is a very important piece, but on top of that, we need to have software. We need to have software that has obviously a browser for internet connectivity, but we need to build a filter into that particular browser. And that is something that we as a company first started in 2010. And since then, we have over 500,000 children, mainly in the Spanish-speaking world up until now, who use our technology. So we're very much focused on education, ensuring that children learn using digital formats. So either this content in a cartoon format, let's say for the younger children, and the slightly older ones, say in an HTML5 format, which is interactive. They can actually access this these content whenever they want. We've got one partner in Southeast Asia, and we're putting educational content onto the mobile phones. So it's a portable device, it's something they take with themselves. Frequently, they have long journeys from their homes to schools and then also returning home. And what they can do is actually access this content and increase the speed of their learning, which in turn is going to ensure that they do better at school. And if this is spread across an entire country, it's going to be one of the key factors for helping to increase GDP in countries, increase the education, ensure these youngsters, when they do come into the job markets, they're better prepared, they're more exposed to technology, they can be more effective, and they can generally add to the wealth of the country, and obviously their own personal wealth and the wealth of their own families as well. So we're not going to stop it. We have to encourage it, but we need to ensure that we actually manage how this advances. And in particular, we need to ensure that children are always safe and secure, and we create the right environment for them to learn.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, Sule. What I understand, end of the day, any piece of equipment or electronic device which has a lot of components is useless without the operating system and the content. So it's the operating system, the software, basically the solution and the content which makes it work. Which let's say in fine dining, it's the taste is in the sauce and the gravy. The ingredients. And I know you appreciate fine dining. Actually, Brian is one of the sort of experts on wine and also fine dining, and also he's a lookalike of Richard Gere. So initially I thought of fooling the lady. I have Richard Gere online, but okay. So I remember when we met in 2018 in Mobile World Congress in Barcelona at the Spanish Pavilion. So I reckon that was the time when PhoneKit was born and the idea. So just tell me a little bit about that. So, what happened there? What was the response and how the journey started?
Okay, so Carlos, the CEO of the company, who's the creator of everything that we do, who has a brilliant mind, his daughters were becoming of an age where they were saying to him, "Daddy, we want a phone." And he looked at all the phones in the marketplace, he looked at all the software available, and he thought, wow, there's nothing suitable here that I would feel happy with giving my daughters. So he started to develop himself a concept, which is what we originally launched in 2018 as PhoneKid, and what has subsequently developed into two. It's morphed, if you will, into two versions. One for Southeast Asia called Geniora Phone, and the other one for the rest of the world called BlaBlue. So we came to Mobile World Congress with a concept. We had a phone and we had a software in it. And the BBC tracked us down and interviewed me for 2 minutes, which was aired every 2 hours for 24 hours on the BBC News channel, all about the Mobile World Congress. I think they did 2 or 3 little slots, one of which was on us. And they said, this is the most innovative thing that we've seen at Mobile World Congress. So it was really fantastic for us as a small company, having developed something. We weren't really sure what the reaction was going to be, for them to single us out, as well as many other publications. We were interviewed on about 5 different other TV channels, and we were reviewed in 900 different publications, everywhere from Australia, the Far East, Japan, Vietnam, all the way to South America and North America as well. So we really obviously touched on, I think, a very important point. We had a lot of people who came to visit the stand, and they just said, tell me when this is available. I want to have this for my children. Obviously, we always want to try and protect our children. The last thing we're ever going to do to, say, an 8-year-old is give them the keys to the car and say, go and take it for a ride. No. When they learn how to ride a bicycle, we want to be with them. We want to hold their hand. When they first learn how to skate, we want to be with them as well. I think we need to do the same with technology as well. We need to hold a child's hand. We need to teach them how to use technology responsibly. And I think by instilling these values in children, on the one hand, they can show to us that they are responsible, and then also, while we can start off with maybe a fairly tight rein, we can start giving them a little bit more freedom as well. But all of this should also be part of a negotiation as well. So the concept that we've built into our software, and in particular into the phone, is what we call digital parental interaction. And this is one of the real innovative features, which is basically to say that you give the phone to the child, but you also give almost like a remote control, that once you link the child's phone with the parent manages what the child can access. They can also establish a filter blocking certain content as well on the internet. They can allow them access to the Play Store or not. And all of these can be managed, scheduled, or they can actually be done in real time, turning it on and off as well. And this is part of a discussion. So we suggest, and we've had hundreds of meetings with schools, with parents, with teachers, with the children as well, that this should be part of an open environment, really. I think the importance of the family cannot be denied anywhere in the world. And the more we can show to children how to use this technology, how to use it to their benefit as well, also protecting them, ensuring that they're not exposed to inappropriate content, is one of the most important things that we can do for future generations going forward.
Okay, brilliant. Actually, I remember, at that time, even I wanted one of your phones because, it sounded quite exciting and different and unique. I haven't come across a similar project at that time to anyone else. Okay, so tell me that how Escudo Web and PhoneKit is different than what we have in the market, or if there is anything in the market. What is your value proposition and what is your unique selling proposition? And what is the top most key factor, the differentiating factor, which you guys have?
Okay. There are a number of things I think that really differentiate us from anything in the competition. What there tends to be in the market really for managing children's devices are either systems that control a child's phone, or on the other hand, spy. Now, we don't think that the control approach is a particularly good one. We think that it's been tried and it's failed. Spying is even worse, because the moment a child realizes that the parent is actually accessing, seeing all of their text messages, seeing exactly what searches they're doing, what they're chatting, you're going to create a communication problem with that particular child. Another thing that has tended to be done in the past as well, and I've certainly been guilty of this because my children are slightly older now, when you get annoyed with a child, what do? You take away their phone. Now, the first time they're going to be not very happy, the second time they're going to be very unhappy, the third time they're going to be mad, and probably the fourth they're going to say, I don't want the phone. So you're going to have a breakdown in communication there. So that's not good either. And there's a lot of psychological studies that have been done to say when you give a child a phone, it becomes their first almost jewel. And to give the analogy to Lord of the Rings, my precious, it's the first object that they have that is almost their treasure, and it's personal to them. If you
very personal.
Yeah, and if you, and the same way that your phone is very personal to you and mine's personal to me, if someone touches your phone, you say, put that back.
Even the girlfriends and wives are not allowed to touch. And if you remember, you know, those retro or the orthodox times when, you know, the best punishment used to be you are grounded.
Yeah.
So in these days, even if you ground a child, they don't care as long as they have their phone or the tablet. Exactly. Imagine if you take that away, it's a disaster.
Exactly. But what you should do, and this is where really what we have on the first instance then, our solution is not an app. The problem with apps is they're easy to download, but they're also easy to remove. Okay, so what we've done is we've built the software into the operating system, into the hardware. So the child can go into a phone store and they can wipe the phone as many times as they want. They cannot remove our software from the phone. Okay, so that's the first thing which differentiates it from anything else in the marketplace. Secondly,
so it's like, sorry, I will also try to, you know, raise my hand and ask questions if I get excited, if you don't mind. So correct me if I'm wrong. So is it more of, so it's like an operating system sort, you know, it's embedded in, you know, on the hardware electronic level. So it can't be removed.
Yeah. So the other two areas that we have, we've developed a couple of 8 areas that we have patented, one of which is called modes of use and the other called please listen. The modes of use, it enables a parent to actually categorize any number of applications according to a certain mode. So let's say the child's been at school. With a scheduler, we can say that when the child's at school, they don't need access to any application, why would you want that at school? They're at school to learning. They're going to have class. They don't need the applications available on a mobile phone. But the parent can never turn off the usage of the mobile phone as a phone itself, and they can never turn off the GPS. So that is always on, and that's very, very important from a safety and security perspective as well. So with these modes of use, the child comes back from school, and I'm talking about a few months ago rather than now because the situation has changed. The child comes back and they need to do their homework. The parent can select a mode of use, study time. The parent can associate any number of applications with what the child might need to use when they're studying, which could be maybe any of the office applications, it could be calculator, it could be access to Wikipedia. So anything that the parent thinks, the child might say, I also want to listen to music. You can enable the music player as well. So it's very, very easy to associate with these different modes, which can be play time, it could be study time. There's 8 different modes, and the parent configures exactly what the child can access during those particular moments. So I think that's very important. Secondly, the please listen. Child has finished their homework and they say, okay, I've finished my homework, I've done it really well. Can you give me some free time now? The parent can say, okay, from my mobile phone, and they download a free application, which is either available for iOS as well as for Android. They can say, okay, I'm going to now enable you to have access to all the other applications that I've allowed you to have. Child's in their room, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and it's mealtime. Call the child doesn't respond. What can the parent do? They can go up, they can try and drag them out of the room. But one of the things that they can also do is select the please listen. So they go to the phone and press please listen, and they can actually freeze the screen of the phone for whatever temporal period they want, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour. And the phone is completely frozen. The child can turn the phone on and off, and they can't remove that at all. They can't get around it at all. Now, one of the other benefits, obviously trying to bring the child back from the virtual world to the real world, also is we stop addiction. It's very, very easy, and certainly much easier. I mean, there are many adults who are addicted to their technology as well, but unfortunately we have to use the technology as part of our lives, especially those of us who work in the technology industry. But for children, it's very easy for them to becoming much more engaged than even you were with your phone, and they become addicted to technology, and that has a lot of negative consequences as well. It breaks sleeping patterns. It also means that they become less sociable. For example, they stop interacting with their parents, with their friends as well. So this is something that's very important to try and break. So we've built in this functionality then into our offering, which we have patented. And we think it's a very useful tool, and certainly all the feedback that we've had from parents, from teachers, and even from children, explaining them that we're trying to help them not become addicted. It is very appreciated, and really helps children live in a digital environment. But then we need to put some measures in place which ensure that there's time for family, there's time for activities, and there's time for the technology as well. And we mustn't, go back to what I said before and about the Goldilocks hypothesis, we can't allow them to exceed the time that they're exposed to the technology. So those are the areas really that we are completely different to anyone else. As I said to you beforehand, we also have a filter that uses blacklists and whitelists. And any word that you put in the blacklist, any page, web page that contains that word is blocked automatically. So it's far more secure. You can't say that a Chrome browser or a Microsoft Edge browser, for example, is secure, because while you do have the possibility to block certain web pages, there are millions upon millions of web pages that are not suitable for a child of probably any age. So by doing it easily and simply through this blacklist, very simply and very quickly, you can actually create a very, very strong filter. And because it's also very flexible as well, as the child grows up, proves themselves to be a little bit more responsible, you can give them a little bit more leeway as well. Beyond that, from the parent's phone, they can actually manage the entire configuration of a phone. So they can control the brightness, for example, of the phone. They can also manage the level of the volume with the music player as well. All of these things are very important. And we don't, if we're trying not to expose children, say, to inappropriate content, it's also not good for them to have a music player on full volume, because they can damage their ears. They're very sensitive. They're still in a growing phase as well. So we can take additional steps to really protect them. There's still a lot of controversy about potential blue light being emitted from devices. There have been many studies carried out on rats, but we still don't know what the reality is on children. But if we can some measures, so reducing the brightness and also turning on night mode, for example, when I, the parent, think that it's a good thing, children aren't going to argue with it because they can't do anything about it in the first place. So once they start to live with that, they become more accustomed to it and more accepting of it as well, because at the end of the day, this is for their own good as well. Over to you, Riz.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about the hardware, the form factor, and the looks and feel of the device itself.
Okay, it's very, very important really for children, if they are going to be given a device, for it to be something that looks and feels not like a Mickey Mouse phone, okay? It has to look like a parent's device, and certainly the feedback we've had with two devices that we have globally now have been extremely good. Parents have said, can I have one of these as well? So it's an Android phone, it's a Android 9, and it has a good configuration. It's certainly going to last for 3 to 4 years. It's got a good camera. We're also bringing in some accessories as well. So the child wants to tailor make it a little bit more for their own likes. If they want it pink, if they want it with a Superman sticker on the back of it. So we're going to be starting to really enable a child to customize the physical phone itself. On the other hand, what we're also doing is we're talking to groups of schools, local education authorities, and also governments as well, to see if they want to actually customize some of the applications that are available on there as well. So it could be, for example, games which have been approved by associations which seek to protect children. So really we want this phone to have appropriate content. And we want to make available through a specific Play Store approved content, so the parent doesn't have to worry about that as well. And this is all going to be incorporated into these phones as well. And we think that that's very important. So the more you can protect your child remotely, the more you can enable them to have their phone, give them a certain amount of freedom, but create it almost a walled garden for them to operate in. They can use the phone. We can manage when they use it as well. We can even ensure, for example, that after 9 o'clock at night, the phone cannot be turned on completely without ever having to take the phone away from the child. So all of these are very important things which are there to protect children. They're there to help parents, and they're there for us to help teach society going forward, because we've had a number of years where there has been no control. And the effects of all of this we are going to see in the future. And it's going to take a lot of effort on behalf of parents, schools, universities, society in general, to try and eradicate some of these bad learning habits. So the more we can do it now, the more we're going to prepare a well-prepared, balanced society of young people who are growing up, knowing and using technology, but not overutilizing technology. And I think that's very important. Over to you, Riz.
So tell me that, I'm already excited, the product sounds brilliant. I think it has a real social, commercial and technical implications within the industry and within the society. And it can be a really brilliant product. So which markets, if you can tell us which markets you're looking to launch them in first, and how does do you guys have tailored content and tailored look and feel about the software and the solution itself based on different markets? Because every country has their own social and ethnic norms, and various other religious and other aspects, historical aspects. So certain things can be done in Asia and Middle East and can't be done in Europe, and vice versa. So if you can elaborate a bit on that.
Sure. So unfortunately, the COVID-19 has delayed a little bit our launch, and is obviously delaying a little bit the availability of the phones in retailers, but we're starting to sell it online. We've launched this month in Indonesia, and we're going to be rolling out very shortly to Singapore, to Malaysia, to Vietnam, to Sri Lanka. And then in the rest of the world, we start to launch next month in Switzerland, in Spain, and we're going to be rolling out to other countries, France, Germany, Italy, Nordic countries, South America as well. We're in the process of signing some very interesting deals with some very large operators as well. So we think we've got a good go-to-market plan. And the look and feel of these two phones are quite different. So we've taken a lot of input from our go-to-market partners. So Geniora in Southeast Asia, we're using a lot of designs of some of the icons. For example, when you freeze the screen input, and really icons and almost the cartoons which are relevant to their local market and almost recognizable. What we're also trying to take into account as well are religious requirements. So Indonesia being a Muslim country, the parent can also manage when a child's phone should be frozen for the child to say their prayers as well. What we're able to do in some of the other large local markets is take on board some further customization which is relevant to a local market. So despite the fact that we're a small software company, we have that possibility. It doesn't take us very long to make some changes, to make color changes, for example. The the version that we have that we're launching in Switzerland, the image that we have for calling the child for mealtime has a plate of pasta, for example. So that's very particular to the Swiss, and in particular the Italians as well. And that will resonate in some countries. We might have to change the icon for other countries as well. But we do have this possibility to make a little bit more of customization. And we also want to take on board cultural elements as well. The colors, they need to be soft colors as well, which are acceptable in the local country. Nothing that is going to be overly garish or is going to be something that is going to detract, let's say, from the attraction of the mobile phone as well. So we're trying to take on board all of these ideas, these design elements as well, and build it into the phone going forward. And certainly our plan is to continue doing this as we launch in more and more markets as well. So we think that's very, very important. And if as and when we take on board new markets, and certainly as we bring in further functionality into the mobile phones as well, we're going to be very, very sensitive to feedback that we receive from parents, from children, from schools, from teachers as well. So we accept that we need to listen, and we want to make this the access to the content on these mobile phones a dynamic thing. So in Indonesia, the phone is being launched with educational content, which is approved by the government. So for the first year, it's included on the phone automatically, and as the child progresses into the next year, they can renew the license to have new content, which will be automatically downloaded when they're in a Wi-Fi area, and then we'll get rid of the older content as well. So we manage the utilization of the hard drive on the phone as well. And obviously it will store a certain amount of information as the child does tests, which can then be sent to the teacher as well. So very important in all of this, this digital content is being able to have online testing, and for the teacher and for the parents also to be able to get some feedback as to how is the child progressing as a result of utilizing this digital content. So it becomes an important part of the day-to-day of a child, and also in particular of the educational environment and how children should learn going forward more and more. This has been really backed by UNESCO as well, and they have identified the mobile phone as being potentially a very, very important tool for trying to increase digital education. And all the points that I mentioned previously, which is, this is the way to take society forward, the way to build economies, it's through education. So helping countries, helping cultures have access to more digital education, trying to get that price level down as well, maybe with the help of telecoms operators, the help of banks, the help of the World Bank, for example, the help of subsidies maybe from the government as well, getting sponsors as well from the software, from the hardware world as well. Suitable content, apt for children, secure environment, and help the educational process. All of these things are just so important for us, and I think for society going forward.
And I think you're spot on the fact where the governments, the associations, the United Nations, and even GSA may come into play. The endeavor of mobile for everyone and bridging the digital divide. I think those are few of the areas when we talk about tech for good. So a lot been happening, but I think there still needs to be a proper direction and the purpose, there. So we are at least able to see that something is happening with some tangible results, and we have some sort of action items and key performance indicators. So where things are heading. So before I move on to the bigger question, so I think when you were talking about the content and the device being robust, which obviously is going to be a key factor. So I reckon that the system on chip and the RAM and the processor going to be quite decent.
Yes, and while we've launched the first phone in Indonesia, we're going to come out with a second model, so a slightly superior model. So for those who want a better phone, slightly larger screen as well, that's going to be available. So we're doing some testing at the moment. And while we're launching the first phone in, as I mentioned, initially Switzerland and Spain, we're looking at having a superior phone as well. So depending on what the age of the child is, what the utilization, what the requirements are going to be, they're going to be at least two options. And there's something that we're very cognizant of, because at the end of the day, a child is going to be using the phone for many things, and there are going to be some games that they're also going to want. So the phone has got to be sufficiently, the processor has got to be sufficiently fast that they're not going to have the phone breaking down in the middle of a game, and that the battery capacity is also going to be sufficient. Yeah. So we're taking all those things into account, and obviously continuing as we move forward to make improvements.
Okay, so can I sum two questions in one big question, just to put some more pressure on you? Okay, so explain, one-on-one of how your phone works. So if you switch it on, so it's a turnkey solution, how we get it up and running. One, then a larger question that end of the day, the business case and the commercials are always important. End of the day, it's a solution, it's a tool, it's of course obviously education, and there's a whole ecosystem around it, the value chain. So how the MNOs, the telcos can play a role, because obviously telcos do deal in mobile devices. Of course, the SIM needs to go into a device for the service to work. So that's a given. And this particular solution and product of yours is even more a bit special because it focuses on education. So I believe there is a very strong business case. There is a very strong commercial case. So if you can explain a bit on how the MNOs come into play, what benefit, what role they can play in, and also the overall partners in the ecosystem like distributors, retailers, intermediaries, even probably schools or ministries of education can come into play. So how all of that fits in.
Sure. So the first question then, the network that we're setting up for go-to-market consists of telecoms operators, MVNOs, distributors, and other retailers as well. And what we're seeking to do is create no channel conflict. So for every single country that we intend to be in, we only want one partner. Now, initially, let's say we have a distributor and they have a number of customers that they serve, that's absolutely fine. So if in any large country, let's say, there's a two-tier structure, we can cope with that. We've built into our business model some healthy margins as well. So it is interesting as a business model for a distributor, for telco to take on as well. And specifically for a telco, let's say an MVNO as well, we think that the product should be bundled with a SIM card, with a data package as well. And perhaps if the operator has their own internet filter as well, build that into it. And certainly some of the big ones, I know they have that, and we've been talking to some of them about that. For some of the smaller ones, or those who don't have a specific filter for the mobile phone, they can use ours. Ours is free of charge. It can be bundled in there as well. So, and we also think that there are going to be some countries where parents will go in and they'll buy the phone outright. And that's absolutely fine. But we also think that this should be maybe spread over a period of a contract, maybe a 2-year contract, maybe a 3-year contract. Maybe bundled in with the educational content as well. And that will certainly break down the price so it becomes almost insignificant on a monthly basis to have the phone, to have some data, to have the filter, which is the most important part really of this whole package as well. And maybe have, again, a portal to educational approved content. And as you said beforehand, bringing governments into this as well. I think governments have a role to play. Local education authorities have a role to play. Enterprises that seek to protect children as well, they all have a role to play. And we're trying to build this ecosystem around the phone because I think it's the only way to go forward. We have to try and consider every interested party in this. The more we can bring all of these voices into this one particular area, the better the solution that we have will be. So it might be initially in some countries, we don't have all the players involved, but as soon as they see this, as soon as they see the value, they will want to become involved in it. And in the past, we have spoken to some of the telecoms regulators, and they have said they would love to see our system being used in all phones being sold to young children, because it is the only way forward. We should not be putting in the hands of children a device which is giving them access to potentially extremely inappropriate content for them, which is going to have some negative consequences on them. So to come to the second part of the question, which was a setup, it's a very, very easy process. You turn the child's phone on, you touch the screen, produces a QR code. That QR code is then scanned by the parent's phone. Once they've downloaded the free app for iOS or for Android, they scan that, and that then means that phone is linked until it's released by that one parent. Another thing to also say, a parent can manage as many devices as they have children. So if the parent had 100 children, they could manage from their single phone device 100 children.
I think you're talking about the king of Swaziland. He has about, I don't know, 100 wives. So,
okay. Wow. Lucky guy, or maybe not. So there's no limit to that. So that's something that we've taken on board. Also, we also don't think that having access to applications like WhatsApp are suitable. So what we've done on our phone is we've created a system that we call Family Chat, and the parents can decide exactly which members of the family can also link into the phone, again, scanning the QR code, grandparents, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and enable them to participate in these family chats. When the child has proved that they're responsible, when they're mature enough to maybe have WhatsApp, we can consider that. But really WhatsApp, apart from obviously some of the benefits of keeping in contact with their friends, it is an open door for potentially cyberbullying, potentially for people who abuse children as well. So it's something that certainly we as a company are very much against. It's completely up to parents, and they need to decide when their child is ready for it, but we have put in our own system, which we encourage parents to use. So we've got some very good websites, both for Southeast Asia and for the rest of the world, which explains step by step exactly how to set this up. It's very, very intuitive software as well. When we've been sending samples around the world for people to pick up and trial, within a couple of minutes, they're fully conversant with how to use the phone. They could be doctors, lawyers, anyone from any walk of life, with no technological experience and very limited experience using a mobile phone. They can use this, be up and running. But of course we have a manual, of course we have very simple to use videos explaining this, and we're always there to support. And each of our distributors, the telecommunication companies as well, they'll be creating some additional content as well, taking what we have and putting some branding of their own around it as well. So very, very straightforward, very easy to use, and very easy to operate. So no issues there whatsoever.
Okay, so another question, before I go to the main question. Since it's a very specialized product, it's a very different and unique solution. So probably, depending on different markets, probably in some cases there would be a need for a specialized, go-to-market marketing campaign, or sort of, awareness campaigns, kind of road shows, or some kind of activity to create some interest and some excitement, so people are aware that there's a special product which exists, and so probably so from that perspective, the MNOs or the distributor or the local partner come into play. So my question is, so obviously you guys will have a support role in that, and what kind of support you guys will be offering?
Absolutely, we're going to support all of our partners in this particular task. And one of the things that certainly some of the large operators have said they wanted to do is they want to have a go back to school launch campaign, which makes a lot of sense. No matter what age a child is, it's an exciting moment of the year. Let's hope that children can in fact go back to school in September. It's still a little bit in doubt, but if it is in doubt, all the more reason to give these children the phone, because as I mentioned earlier, we have a built-in GPS, and we're always concerned about where our children are. There have been a number of devices, in particular the wristwatches, which had built-in GPSs, which haven't always functioned particularly well and have given false readouts. So the experience with those hasn't been particularly good, but certainly using our system, we've been very happy with the way that works. And if a parent is ever concerned about where a child is, in real time, they can actually see, using the GPS, where they are. And they can also see the movements of the previous 7 days. Another of the things that we built into our phone as well, which is very important, is we built in an SOS button, which is a button that's hidden on the phone. Child presses that for a few seconds, and it automatically calls the device which is linked to that, so one of the parents. And until the parent actually takes that call, it will constantly call that number. What it also does is during the first minute, it'll send out multiple emails showing exactly where the child is. So the child's in any situation of danger, someone is trying to take them away from their friends, child presses that, and the parent is alerted to where they are and what's actually happening. And this cannot be seen on the phone. So if whoever's taken the child away looks at the mobile phone, you cannot detect that this call has been made. So we are trying to ensure that we're covering as many of these bases as possible. So to come back to your question, then yes, we're going to be helping each of our partners in terms of how to promote that. We have a number of ideas ourselves, and it's got to be suitable to whatever the cultural norms are as well. But yes, we're going to be working with the partners, and in particular, we're going to be working with them if they say, okay, we'd like to add some other feature to this as well. So going forward, we're going to be very involved with our partners. We're not just going to sell them the phone and walk away. No, we're going to be there throughout. And that's our long-term view.
Okay, so now, probably we're heading towards the end of the session. One of a very solid questions I'm coming up with. Of course, it's a bit of ironic as well. Which one of those buzzwords which everyone is everyone use on a daily basis. The hashtag digital. So my question is, especially on a serious note, in the wake of COVID-19, we have seen unprecedented situation across the world. So industries have come to a halt. Retail, travel, aviation, schools, stores, cinemas, everything is literally closed. And especially, few of the functions which run the daily lives of human beings, apart from the food and other things, it's the work and the children in the school. So here what when we were talking in the start that, because of the mobile and telecommunications technology we have, the times we live in, it has played a huge role. If it wasn't for that, the governments, the associations, the UN agencies and doctors and medical agencies wouldn't be able to communicate with each other, wouldn't be able to pass on information, research data, numbers, monitoring, and whatnot. It's all mobile technology. The professionals of individual verticals or expertise from the health industry are there. But if you do not have this communication, if you do not have this spectrum in the air, which the technology has, put to use, it was for nothing. You won't know what's happening in Spain. You don't know what's happening in other, end of the world in Australia. So in all of this scenario, the digital transformation or everything becoming digital or everything becoming mobile is even more important and more relevant than ever. And, so in terms of how we manage and how we take care of future generations, which is our children and the topic of the session. So I think this scenario, this challenge has actually given us practice time as well. If you know, in our last conversation when we were talking, so you know, God forbid it doesn't happen, but you know, reality of lives are different, and what we expect, you know, the second wave or you know something else can happen. You know, as we said earlier, that you know human beings are most powerful in the times of history than we were before, but our huge tanks and missiles and aircraft carriers, you know, you can't fight even a virus which you can't even see. You know, it has brought down all the superpowers on the knees. So so I think the technology which has it's been a pivot in all of this scenario, you know. And I haven't seen people talking about you know, of course, salute and you know all the respect to health workers, the doctors which are putting their lives in danger. But I think the technology is playing a huge role. Without communication, without that digital connectivity, you know, it would have been disastrous.
Absolutely.
So remote education, e-education and digital education, because you know, our generation is going through certain, you know, these challenges. So but we want our generation or our children to be safe and go to the next phase fully prepared. So God forbid if schools doesn't open, you know, things don't go back to the normal they were. So you know, this practice time has given us some ideas. So I think the remote education come into play a lot. So you know why I'm you know, putting up a huge question with you know, all the words. So I think you're getting you know, the gist of what I'm trying to ask. So I want your professional opinion and professional your professional thoughts, that how this important area can be turned into you know, something practical, that the remote, the distance digital education, not the learning part, because you know, e-learning is a very vague and generic word. It doesn't mean anything. You and me can e-learn, but I'm talking about digital and distance learning, the distance education. So how does that translate? And you know, probably this scenario and the timing has you know even made your solution or product even more important. So please.
Okay. To a certain extent, as I mentioned at the start, you know, technology is becoming more and more part of our life, and we've suddenly been thrown into a scenario now whereby we have to rely on digital technology for just about everything within our lives now. Frequently, in a lot of places, you couldn't even go out to a grocery store, so a lot of people have resorted to ordering food online. As we said earlier as well, the fact that schools are closed, children are now enforced to actually change their way of learning. And for a lot of them, it's very difficult. But it's an opportunity that I think children need to embrace. Parents need to embrace. Parents need to be very open to this, because our world is changing every day. Unfortunately, we've had an accelerated process of enforcement to move to digital education, and we have to go along with it, but also what we have to do is make sure that it's a process which is managed. And the point that I made earlier on as well is the hardware is a very important piece of that, but we need to ensure that we have the software elements, that we create secure environments, so secure filters, that we don't overexpose children to content that they shouldn't really be exposed to. So technology is great. It needs to be used both from an educational perspective, and also children need to play games on it as well. And if we can actually create digital content which is educational in the form of a game as well, so almost this gamification, it becomes a double interest and double engagement, I think, with children. So it's not just taking, say, a book and converting it into a PDF. That is a very basic form of digital education. But what we need to do is create interactive content, create content which is engaging, create content which is going to get the child's interest, and probably as the child actually goes through this content, it also at the end of each, if you will, chapter, albeit it's the wrong term to use here, tests them as well, which means that their learning is done outside of the traditional learning space, which is when they go to school, and now when they have their theoretical school time on their devices. So by creating content which is engaging, putting it in a secure environment, giving the children a device which is something that we're not going to take their parents away from them as well, I think it creates something which is very, very positive, and something that we as parents need to try and support. In particular, if that requires financial support, then have a look at in terms of our priorities, and maybe we're not going to buy an extra bottle of wine this week, but we're going to pay for the child to actually have a tablet or to have a mobile phone, which is going to be an important part of their education. As we say, we don't know what's going to happen in September. Children might go back to school, or they might not be able to go back to school. So the more I think we can invest here, today, and now, the more prepared the children are going to be going forward in the future.
Brilliant. Okay, so okay, I have another question. So but probably it's sort of a teaser for the audience and our colleagues who are watching. So two things. I'll hit you with the question, and also then I want you to end the session with some words for the audience, which includes our colleagues, our friends, and especially I want few words for the market, actually, the end customer, the real customer, which is the education sector, the parents, and for the MNOs and the ecosystem around MNOs, the distribution, the retail partners, the MNOs. So what do you have to say from an Escudo Web point of view, that any message you want to put across, that how you can support them in this particular area? So the question, I think in emerging tech, I believe a lot is happening. Everyone is, they've learned these buzzwords, and it's fashion. Everyone wants to say AI, everyone wants to say blockchain and whatnot. So I believe when it comes to authentication and transparency, and verifications of systems or products or things, that either it's original product, original software, original hardware. Is it counterfeit? Is it used? Is it a gray market? So tell me a little bit about it, and then we'll have a separate session on that particular area. So what are your thoughts, and what you're hiding in your?
Sure. Okay, so that's the first question. So we think that there are two areas that we need to target on as a manufacturer of this solution. We want to target parents, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who need to be happy with what we're offering. We want children to be happy with the phone, and we think we've created a very desirable phone. We've got some great packaging. The website is really good as well. We're just making some changes to it, and we are creating an environment that is going to be, I say, to the point I made beforehand, going to get all parties involved and have everyone being happy. So good for society, good for parents, good for families, good for children, good for teachers, and good for schools as well. The one thing that we really want our go-to-market partners to really push is this concept of digital parental interaction. It's something which, when we talk to parents, when we talk to teachers, when we talk to schools, they all accept that the only way to go forward now with this technology is to get parents involved in the education of their children, which means we don't just give them a device and we let them go. We give them a device and we teach them how to use it as well. So family is always important, and through the last few generations as well, we've had probably a few curves in terms of exposure to technology, limited, but it's becoming part, as we've said throughout this session, of everyday lives. We need it. We can't almost exist without it. We've been forced through COVID-19 to actually resort to technology for our everyday life to achieve everything from buying food to communicating with colleagues who normally would have sitting next to us. So we need to go forward really creating this right environment, having dialogue, having communication with children about the technology, teaching them to be good citizens, teaching them to use technology appropriately, teaching them how to use a browser. We don't just give them a browser and say, hey, do what you want with it. No, that's the wrong approach. And we certainly hope that, that our partners appreciate this. If they're parents themselves as well, they will have gone through some probably quite difficult situations. And we hope that they take on board that this is a way for them to protect their own children and to protect everyone else's children as well. So, so that's the message I'd like people to take away. To come to the second question, I've got another business venture that that we're currently launching at the moment and doing a lot of development work, which is around the authentication market. Now, there are lots of products on the market at the moment that seek to authenticate any products, which could be anything from a bottle of wine to a Gucci bag, for example. Apologies to LVMH for their very good bags as well. One of the things that we have in our society at the moment is the circular economy. This is, in particular, millennials. They want to, when they've finished using a product, they want to be able to sell it on to someone else. And there's a lot of websites that have sprung up in the last couple of years for what we call the resale market. Some of these operate locally, some of these operate in very simple apps. You stop using something, you take a photo of it, you put a price on it, and you put it for sale. Counterfeiters are trying to come into this particular market, pushing fake products in the secondary market. So products that theoretically have had a first owner, or say, I was given this for Christmas, I haven't used it, I'm going to sell it at 10, 15% discount. People always want to buy a bargain. And being able to buy a product which is going to keep the circular economy. It's almost like recycling. It's an element of recycling. Now, according to a number of reports, by 2023, this particular market is going to be worth $51 billion. So it's a huge market. And what we want to do is to try and protect the brand. So if I'm a brand, I've manufactured something, I've sold it to someone, and that person at some stage might want to sell it to someone else, I want to ensure that as much value is retained in that product when it goes to the secondary or even to a tertiary market as well. If I'm a clothing manufacturer as well, I want to ensure that my brand is protected, that whoever has bought it, that when they come to sell it, they're going to get a fair price for that product as well. So we've created a system that will authenticate products, but it'll go beyond that. We've created a unique code for every single product, which cannot be counterfeited. So anyone can actually copy that code and put it on another product as well, but it's always going to be associated with one owner at any particular point in time. So this is a new concept around ownership that we think is very important going forward. And we certainly would like to bring this concept, develop it further, bring it to market to protect individuals who are buying these products in secondary or tertiary markets, to protect the brands, that they ensure that the value of that brand is not brought down by criminals who are copying and selling substandard products. Also for governments to try and protect them, to ensure that they do get their fair share of taxes by products which are sold through authorized, established retailers as well. So all these elements are very important. We think we have developed a concept which is going to be really a nail in the coffin for counterfeiters. And I think that's also very important for society and very important for ensuring that our economy continues to function the best way possible. Yes, recycling, yes, resale economy, yes, the circular economy, but again, with some control within that as well. That's all I'm willing to say at this stage about this, but I'd certainly love the opportunity to explain a little bit more about it at some further stage. So thank you for the opportunity, both today, for explaining more about BlaBlue and Geniora Phone, about what makes us different, and we think what makes us special. And we really hope that your audience finds this of interest as well. And I'd love to be able to field any questions at any stage. So please feel free to publish my details.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much, James. So for all the audience and our colleagues, James is one of the tech time travelers, one of the time travelers from our digital industry who docked in on the Bond space station. So think of it as when you go to space, we have International Space Station. So in our digital world, we have Bond space station. So wherever you are traveling through the time, and if you are one of my tech time travelers, so you are welcome to dock in, talk to us, explain what you're doing. Um, what are your endeavors? What are your plans? What industry? What kind of product? What kind of solution you're working in? And we'll take it to the audience. We have exciting discussions around it. We definitely going to have sessions where more guests are involved with sort of hard talk kind of discussions going forward. But I would really like to thank James for coming up on the first session on Bond Space Station. It was a real immersive session, and I gave you quite a hard time. You have talked a lot. Probably you need a drink, martini. Shaken but not stirred.
Of course.
So I think it's time for over and out from Johannesburg. And Brian, thank you very much for signing in from Spain and also signing off from Spain. So see you very soon. Talking again.
Thank you very much. Over and out from Madrid. All the best and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.